The spotlights filled the hall with a soft golden glow. Atlanta. A charity evening organized to support educational programs in disadvantaged areas. The people were delighted. Every step on the stage was accompanied by ovations, the names of the stars sounded like altar psalms. But today's guest was special, Will Smith. He was not presenting a film. He was not promoting a new series. He came to speak, honestly, humanly, as a father, as a husband, as a person who had gone through both ups and downs. On stage, he spoke about second chances. About mistakes. About the power of words. About how one simple action can affect someone's life, often even unexpectedly. The hall listened attentively. His charisma worked even without jokes. His eyes were alive, real. And at that moment, when everything around seemed perfect, a single sentence broke the silence like a stone thrown into a glass. I hate you. The crowd looked around. Will fell silent. His gaze slid in the direction of the voice. For a few seconds, everything seemed to pause. The glasses did not clink. People did not breathe. The words, spoken clearly, not loudly, but firmly enough, belonged to a young man of about 25. Black jacket, dark jeans, deep-set eyes. He did not look angry. He looked broken. The security guards reacted instantly. Two men were already moving towards him. But Will Smith raised his hand. It's okay, he said into the microphone. The security guards froze. The man stood. He kept his hands down. He had nothing with him but his own voice. And his pain. Do you want to tell me something? Will asked him, calmly, but not with cold indifference. You have a microphone. The organizer from the hall handed him a portable microphone. The man took it reluctantly, as if it weighed hundreds of kilograms. You don't remember me. And that's okay. You've met thousands of people like me. But I'm one of those whose lives you, without knowing it, ruined. And I've been waiting to say this for a long time. The hall fell silent. I'm not looking for attention. I don't want money. I just wanted you to hear it from my own lips. Tom, who was standing backstage as the evening's host, turned pale. The organizers looked at each other. But Will sat down again at the edge of the stage. He listened. And didn't interrupt. You know what's the worst thing? The boy continued. I used to admire you. But then something happened that changed me. Something you did, or didn't do. And I could never forgive it. His voice broke. But he held it together. Will raised his head. And said only one thing, you're here. So something inside you wanted to do more than just express hatred. What exactly? The boy was silent. His eyes were shining. And then he said, because I still can't understand why you just left then. The words hung in the air. Will didn't answer right away. He just nodded. You have a minute. Tell me, and the boy began to speak. Slowly. With pauses. As if he were tearing parts of the story from his throat that had been hurting for years, and at that moment, someone in the back row quietly left the room. With a phone in his hand. And with a familiar expression on his face that of a person who knew much more than just someone else's story. The room was still tense, though no one had tried to intervene. The boy's words pierced the silence like needles, piercing the shells of protection, caution, and social glamour. People didn't know how to react. But they listened. My name is Derek, he said. Maybe it won't mean anything to you. But 12 years ago you came west to my neighborhood. I was a kid then, 11. We were waiting for you like a hero. You spoke from the stage. We all got baseball caps with your signature. But for me it was something more. I tried to reach you. I had a letter. Just a few lines, written in a child's hand. In it I asked you, to help my brother. He stopped. Tears welled up in his eyes, which he tried to hold back. My brother, Jay, had a problem. He was getting dragged into what most boys in such neighborhoods get dragged into. But he loved you. We watched your movies together. He even said he wanted to be like you. And I thought, if you just read the letter, maybe you'd pay attention. Maybe you'd do something. Ask people to help. Not for everyone. For him, the audience held their breath. Will wasn't sitting anymore, he was standing, leaning slightly, listening intently. There was no usual confidence on his face. Only a seriousness that deepened with every passing minute. I asked you. I was standing near the stage. I was holding a sheet of paper. But one of the guards pushed me away. I fell. I remember you looking in my direction. And just walked away. The boy's words sounded like a gunshot. Even Will flinched. 6 months later, my brother was killed. He became what he never wanted to be. He was simply gone. And I watched your movies and wondered how such a person could just turn away. After these words, Derek lowered the microphone. The voice was no longer coming. But the audience did not applaud. Did not condemn. It was silent because it was true silence, the kind that is sometimes louder than screams, and then Will came closer. He asked for another microphone to be brought. And when it was handed to him, he spoke not to the audience, but directly to the guy. I remember that event. I remember the scene. I don't remember you, and that's probably the most painful thing right now. Because you remember every detail. And if you say that I looked and left, then I wasn't who I should have been. I didn't see that at that moment someone nearby needed more than words from the stage. And I apologize. Not from the position of a star. But from the position of a person who didn't see. Didn't hear. And lost the opportunity to do something important, that he took a step closer. That I can't bring your brother back. But I can do one thing right now, listen to you to the end. Without a stage. Without cameras. Just like a human being. Derek looked up. There was no longer any hatred in him. Only pain and fatigue. But something else had changed. Confusion had appeared. And hope, and at that very moment the doors to the hall opened. Someone ran into the room, approaching the stage at a quick pace. It was a middle-aged man, in a gray suit, with a stern expression on his face. The security guard intercepted him, but he shouted loudly, "Will! Don't leave here until you find out the truth. You don't know who this guy's brother really was." The silence turned to a blade again. Derek turned pale. "Don't listen to him. He's lying," the boy exclaimed. "I know you, Derek," the boy answered. "And I know that you left in the letter not only a request. And also, one fact that no one here has voiced yet." Will turn to the boy. He was standing completely different now. As if something inside him had shuddered. As if the whole truth was still ahead. The crowd was whispering nervously. Some were already holding their phones, but not filming, as if they felt the moment was too real to be reduced to a video. People were staring at the stage where Will Smith stood between two men, a broken-hearted boy and a stranger who held something explosive inside him. who are you? Will asked the stranger. My name doesn't matter. I was a social worker in the area where you spoke 12 years ago. And I know Derek. And his brother. I was the person who read every message the kids left at that event. And that's why I'm here. Derek shook his head. It's none of his business. He just wants to ruin everything. Maybe, the man replied. But before you say I'm lying, remember what was written at the bottom of your letter. The last 2 sentences. Derek fell silent. His face went white. His eyes misted. Will looked at him carefully, without pressure. And said, if there's something you haven't said, now's the time to say it. Silence. 2, 3, 5 seconds. And then the words that sounded like they were through cracking glass. I wrote that Jay was afraid. That he told me he was being forced. That there was someone controlling him. That it wasn't his choice. That he gulped air, as if it had suddenly become too thick, and I wrote that if you, Will, were really who you seemed on screen, maybe you could change it. Get him out of it. Make him be who he dreamed he'd be again. The man in the suit nodded. And you know what we found out 2 weeks later? That Jay was trying to get out of the gang. And that's why he was gone. The room exhaled. Will stood still. His hands were clenched into fists, but he didn't say anything. Derek looked down. I remembered all that. But I was a kid then. I only saw what you didn't. If you'd just taken that piece of paper, maybe he'd live. Will finally spoke. I wasn't ready to see the pain in other people's eyes. I thought my performances were enough. But your voice, Derek, it's more important than any movie I've ever made. He walked over to the boy and said, let's go. Let's leave the stage. Let's talk somewhere else. If you'll let me, I want to hear your whole story. Without the microphones. Derek nodded. His body seemed to relax, as if a weight had begun to lift, but as soon as they left the stage, something unexpected happened. The woman in the back row, still holding the phone in her hands, suddenly shouted, it's him. I saw him on video. It was your brother, Jay. He saved my son back then. Everyone turned. The woman, in her 40s, had tears in her eyes. She took out an old photo, a little blurry. It showed 2 boys. One was her son. The other was Jay. That he was considered a criminal. But I know what he did. My son got into a shootout, and Jay pulled him out of the way. And that night, he was gone. Derek froze. Will Smith turned to her. Are you sure? Absolutely. I was looking for him then. I wanted to thank him. But I didn't know his name. Now I do. The words hung in the air like a blessing. Like an apology that doesn't need to be spoken. And, at the same time, like the beginning of a new dialogue. Because Jay wasn't just involved. He was the one who, despite everything, remained good, and that's exactly why he died. The next morning, the whole city knew. The footage from the event spread like wildfire across the internet. But this time the headlines weren't scandalous. They didn't scream, "Star disgraced," they didn't seek out a loud conflict. They talked about something else. Touching moment at charity event, Will Smith listened to pain and discovered a new truth. A hero's brother. The testimony that changes everything. But Will himself wasn't reading the headlines. He was sitting in the back seat of an ordinary taxi, unguarded, unescorted, in a tracksuit and a baseball cap, heading toward the old neighborhood where it all began. Derek was next to him. His eyes were red, but he wasn't silent anymore. He wasn't avoiding my gaze. On the contrary, he seemed calmer, even stronger. Like a man who had finally said everything that hurt. "Do you really want to go there?" he asked. "If I really said yes in my heart, I have to go all the way," Will said. The car stopped outside a small house with a peeling facade and a dusty porch. Jay and Derek's mother lived there. Derek had called her that night. She agreed to meet not right away, but her voice was calm. When the door opened, the woman, about 60, with deep-set eyes and hands that hadn't rested in a long time, stood in silence for a few seconds. Then she said, "I looked yesterday. I've been waiting for the world to apologize for 12 years. But I didn't expect it to come like this." Will hung his head. "I don't know if there's anything I can say to ease the pain. But I'm not here just to apologize. I'm here to make a difference. For you. And for people like you." They had been together for more than an hour. They talked about Jay, who he was as a child, how he drew, how he dreamed, how he changed under the pressure of the street, but never lost the warmth in his eyes. They talked about how society is quick to label and how rarely anyone looks beyond that. Then Will asked, "Will you let me tell this story?" But not because of a talk show. Not because of a star special. But because of him. Because of Jay, and she nodded. If even one boy hears this story and stops, then Jay did not die in vain. Will spent the next few days completely differently than usual. There were no cameras, no social events. He met with teenagers in dangerous neighborhoods, went to schools where teachers fight every day for every soul. And everywhere he told Jay's story, without pathos. Without gloss. Simply about a boy who was good, even when he lived in the midst of cruelty. About his younger brother, who had been carrying anger inside him for years. And about an apology that came not from words but from a willingness to listen. After one of these meetings, a boy approached him. He was 11. He was shaking, but he approached anyway. "I wanted to be like that rapper, but now I want to be like Jay," he said. Because he did good and didn't even brag about it. These words hit Will harder than any award. 2 weeks later, he organized a new program, Second Chance, Stories That Need to Be Heard. Jay's story was at the center of it. There was no red carpet at the opening. Derek spoke there not as a victim, but as a voice. He read a letter that had never reached its addressee. This time in front of hundreds of teenagers. Live, I wrote this letter to Will Smith. But now I'm reading it to all of you. Because, maybe, there is Jay next to you. And if you hear in time he will survive. I end the finale of the evening. Will went on stage, looked into the audience, and said, "I am not the hero of this story. I am just the one who once did not see. But now I have learned to see. And if each of us takes at least one step closer, we will change the future not only for ourselves. And for those who are still silent today." A little over a month had passed since the world heard the story of Jay, the letter that had gone unread, and the public apology that had emerged where there had once been silence. The Second Chance project was growing. Will hadn't just given it his name, he had given it time. Instead of making new movies, instead of another TV show, he had been touring schools, rehab centers, even juvenile detention centers. Not with speeches, but with conversations that he would always begin with the words, "I won't tell this story. It was told by a guy I didn't notice. And his brother, whom the world didn't get to hear." Derek was often by his side. No longer as the guy who hated Will Smith, but as a co-founder. His calm, deep way of speaking moved the teenagers more than any loud motivation, but one day everything changed. A letter arrived at the project headquarters, not an email, not a press release. A real one. Written in pen on the back, for Derek. From someone who should have done this a long time ago. Inside was a sheet of paper, yellowed by time. And the text, uneven, as if written with a trembling hand, asterisk, if you ever read this, then either I'm gone or I've finally managed to get out. This is me, Jay. I knew I couldn't just leave that life. But if you ever remember that letter I wanted to give to Will Smith, know this, I read it. I saw you write it. I didn't say anything because I was afraid. But every day I lived with the thought that I had no right to let you down. If something happened to me, know this, I tried. I really tried to get out. Because you wrote that you believed in me. And that was enough for me to try. That I don't know if anyone will tell you the truth if I'm gone. But know this, you saved me, even if it wasn't for long. And maybe that will be enough to save someone else. Asterisk. When Derek finished reading, he was silent for a few minutes. Then he looked up at Will. He saw. He knew. Everything I thought he didn't know, he carried inside him. But he didn't say anything. Because he didn't think it was enough. And now it's changed everything, Will said quietly. And not just for you. The next week they went to the school Jay attended. It was his mother's last request before she moved in with her relatives. The school was run down, on a budget, with shabby walls. But the kids there were just like Jay had been, dreamers, driven by circumstances. Will and Derek proposed a new initiative, Jay's Class. It was to be a program for students who were on the edge, those with potential but on the brink of failure. Each of them would be given a mentor, a choice, and most importantly, a voice. At the opening of the class, Derek said, "This is not a memorial. This is the beginning. I lost a brother. But today I see in each of you a chance for someone not to lose theirs." After his words, a boy who had been silent all day came up and handed something to Will. It was an old badge with the inscription, "The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air." And the boy said, "My dad wore it. He always said that you inspired him. But he died when I was little. I didn't believe in you, until I saw you here. Can I be in Jay's class, too?" And it was then that Will realized, this story is more than restoring justice. It has become a voice for those who have been silent until now. Because of pain. Because of fear. Because of the indifference of society, and each new help no longer remained unread. Autumn had brought a chill, but the courtyard of the old school, now officially renamed the J. Harrison Center, was warm. Not just from the sun, from hugs, voices, smiles. Today was supposed to be a regular school holiday, but it became something much more. A large banner read, "Jay's Class of First Class Choosing Life," not the streets. On a makeshift stage sat teachers, mentors, local activists, and Derek next to them. Will stood aside, without a microphone, without a role. He didn't have to speak. Everything that needed to be said was said by the kids. The first to come out was a girl of about 16, Aisha. She had run away from home before, had a drug problem, and skipped school. Today she was holding her diploma and giving a speech. "This is the first time in this class that I haven't heard, 'You're a problem.' Then I heard, 'You're alive.' And they asked me, 'What do you want to do with your life?' She smiled, 'I don't know for sure yet. But I know for sure that I don't want to run away anymore. I'm staying. And I'll help others stay.' Then a guy came out, the same one who once gave Will the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air badge. He looked his classmates in the eyes and said, "My dad once believed in the movie. I believe in reality. And reality is us. We are here. We are alive. We are the choice that Jay made. And now our choice is not to betray his memory." After the speeches, the school principal came to the stage. In his hands was a letter in a frame. "We received this letter a few days ago. It was sent by a person who was once in the same gang as Jay. Now he is serving a life sentence. But when he learned that the program was being held in honor of someone he remembered well, he sent this: I don't deserve to be here, among the living. I made a choice, and I paid for it. But Jay, he was different. He was protective. He said, 'No way.' And one day he stood between me and the guy we were supposed to beat. Then he told me, 'It's not you. You can do better.' I laughed then. But now, from the inside, I remember his eyes. If what you're doing saves even one of you, Jay has won. Where I lost." After reading this, Will could no longer remain silent. He went on stage. We all think that change is big things. Laws. Campaigns. Influence. But change is people. One person who says the right word at the right time. One guy who saw his brother drowning in time, and wrote a letter. One look that says, "You don't have to be who your neighborhood made you." And you know what's the most powerful thing? Will looked into Derek's eyes. Apologizing can be a start. But true victory is when you turn pain into a path. And lead others. And in this class, I don't see graduates. I see leaders. After the ceremony, everyone stayed on campus. They ate pie, played basketball, hugged, took pictures. Will and Derek sat under a tree, like friends who were united not by happiness, but by truth. "You know," Derek said, "sometimes I think that all this happened not because I hated you, but because I was really looking for someone to believe in. And I didn't find it then. But I have found it now." "Me too," Will replied. "I learned to listen. Not as an actor. As someone who has also made mistakes. And doesn't want to keep quiet anymore." That same evening, after the incident, Will received a message on his phone, from unknown subject, about Jay. Text: "I was at that school today. I sat in the back row. My brother died the same day Jay did. But no one remembered him. No one kept his name. Now I know, I have to do the same. Thank you for giving me a voice." The story that began with hatred, became the beginning of a chain reaction. And each subsequent letter, each "thank you," each "me too," proved, truth can begin with pain. But it leads to hope, and Jay's voice was no longer heard only in letters. It was in the voices of those who survived. And it was no longer silent.